What if the seductive literary figure you thought you knew, Lolita, wasn't just some controversial artistic idea, but was actually based on a real girl? A girl kidnapped at 11, held captive for 21 months. Her name was Sally Horner.
It's a really startling connection.
It is. And today, we're really diving into the book, The Real Lolita, by Sarah Weinman. This book just meticulously uncovers that hidden history, showing this undeniable link between Sally Horner's tragic life and, well, one of the most infamous novels of the 20th century.
Yeah, our goal here is to explore what the book reveals, understand Sally's harrowing journey, and see exactly how her real story intersects with that fiction.
And as we get into these complex, sometimes really difficult topics, remember you can find our mindful moments over on our YouTube channel.
Right. They offer these AI-driven book analyses, kind of designed to spark deeper reflection and critical thinking. They really complement discussions like this one about how, real life shapes art and how we understand it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's unpack this story the way the book does, starting with the girl herself, Sally Horner. It's 1948. She's just 11, living in Camden, New Jersey.
And the book opens with this seemingly small thing, a childish act. Sally was trying to swipe a 5-cent notebook from a store, basically on a dare.
Just a kid thing, right? But that moment, that dare, it became the doorway to, well, an absolute nightmare.
And that's right where she runs into Frank LaSalle. He was a man in his 50s, and the book details how he immediately used this calculated deception.
How so?
He confronted Sally, terrified her by posing as an FBI agent, told her she was under arrest.
Wow, an FBI agent. To an 11-year-old.
Yeah, and he threatened her with reform school. That threat must have just paralyzed her, It gave him his initial leverage.
But his manipulation didn't stop there, did it? He then went to her mother, Ella.
Right, Ella Horner. The book paints a picture of her poor, overworked, a single mom. Her husband, Sally's father, had tragically taken his own life years earlier.
So she was vulnerable.
Very. And LaSalle spun this story. Convinced Ella he was the father of Sally's friends, that they were all going on a little vacation to Atlantic City, and suggested Sally join them.
And Ella agreed.
She did. Probably saw it as a rare chance for a free trip for Sally, something she couldn't afford herself. Even though Sally apparently wasn't too thrilled about it, Ella agreed. Put her on a bus, thinking it was just a short getaway.
God, it's just heartbreaking. Thinking about Ella's good intentions just colliding so horribly with LaSalle's, well, sinister plan. That innocent bus ride was the start of nearly 2 years of captivity.
Yeah. The book describes those first weeks in Atlantic City. Sally sent some letters home, saying she was okay, even asking to stay longer.
So it seemed okay at first.
For a short time. But then, after about 3 weeks, this was July 1948, the communication just stopped. No more calls, no more letters. That's when Ellen knew something was terribly wrong. She got really alarmed.
And that's when she went to the police.
Exactly. The book really highlights Detective Marshall Thompson. He took on Sally's case and became, by all accounts, incredibly dedicated, tirelessly working to find her.
Did they have any leads early on?
One crucial piece of evidence turned up in the Atlantic City boarding house where LaSalle had stayed, a photo of Sally.
Oh, wow. What did it show?
The book mentions it's particularly poignant. Sally's on a swing, wearing like a cream-colored dress, and her eyes. The book describes her eyes in that picture, capturing this really unsettling mix of fear and this intense desire to please.
Chilling. It's like a window into what she was already going through.
Totally.
Yeah.
And as Detective Thompson started digging into LaSalle's background, a really disturbing history started to emerge.
What did they find?
Well, first, the multiple aliases, Fogg, Warner, that was a red flag. But the critical thing was his prior criminal record.
Okay.
The book details his arrest and sentence back in 1943 for statutory rape. It involved 5 young girls ages 12 to 15.
5 girls.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
And that wasn't all. He'd also been sought for kidnapping and statutory rape back in 1937 after eloping with a girl named Dorothy Dare when she was underage.
So this wasn't a one-off.
Yeah.
This was a pattern.
A dangerous, predatory pattern that had somehow gone unchecked for years. And what Sarah Weinman's book does so well is use these, police records, historical documents, to build this detailed picture of LaSalle's past. It shows the sinister reality beneath that sort of normal-seeming exterior.
So after Atlantic City, where did he take her?
Well, the book traces their movements across the country. It was this terrible journey. First to Baltimore. They stayed there from about August 1948 to April 1949.
Okay.
Then they moved on to Dallas. And all along, LaSalle was using different aliases for himself and for Sally, trying to hide them in plain sight. Sally was known as Madeline LaPlante, Florence Planet. Different names.
And what was life like in Dallas? Do they just blend in?
It seems like they did, on the surface. The book describes them living in a trailer park. LaSalle worked hard to create this facade of normalcy. Sally even went to school, Our Lady of Good Counsel.
Really? She went to school?
Yeah. Neighbors, people like Maud Smiley and Josephine Kagamaster mentioned in the book, they saw them as a father and daughter. Seemingly devoted, they remembered Sally seeming, outwardly okay baking, having a dog, going shopping with him.
It sounds almost mundane, but I'm guessing it wasn't.
Not at all. The book cuts right through that facade. It emphasizes the intense, just suffocating control LaSalle had over her. Pathologically possessive, rarely let her out of his sight, except for school.
And she had to keep up the lie.
Constantly. Maintain the story he was her father to avoid, well, who knows what punishment, living under that constant threat.
Were there any signs, anything neighbors noticed that seemed off?
There were subtle things. Despite the appearances, one neighbor, Ruth Janish, remembered Sally needing an appendectomy, a hospital stay.
Okay.
And when Sally came back, Ruth noticed these small details, like Sally shuffling when she walked, or how her smile didn't quite reach her eyes.
Wow. Those little observations speak volumes, don't they?
Absolutely. The book highlights how they point to the immense psychological burden, the trauma Sally was carrying beneath that surface. It's just chilling how skilled abusers can be at creating that false reality. It makes it so hard for anyone outside to see the truth.
But thankfully, as the book lays out, there was a turning point.
Yeah.
And it involved that same neighbor, Ruth Janish, right?
Yes, Ruth Janish. She had actually moved from Dallas to San Jose, California, but her suspicions about LaSalle and Sally, they lingered.
So she saw them again in California.
She did. And in March 1950, Ruth saw an opportunity, a crucial one, and she took it. She invited Sally over to her trailer one day when LaSalle was out. She sensed it might be her only chance to talk to Sally alone.
And did Sally talk?
With incredible patience, incredible gentleness from Ruth, she did. Sally finally confided in someone. After almost 2 years of captivity, isolation, that enforced silence. You have to imagine the immense courage it took.
What did she say?
She confirmed it. LaSalle wasn't her father. He'd forced her to stay with him all that time. She desperately missed her mother, her sister. She just wanted to go home. It's such a powerful moment in the book, Hope finally breaking through all that darkness.
So Ruth contacted the authorities immediately.
Right away. Local police, the FBI. The book really captures Sally's conflicting emotions, then immediate terror. Thinking LaSalle might come back, pleading, please get me away from here.
But also relief.
Immense, profound relief. Finally being with real police officers who believed her story.
Who handled the interview?
Sheriff Hornbuckle in San Jose. He played a really vital role. Listened patiently, attentively, as Sally just poured out her whole terrible story, starting right from that day at the Five and Dime, detailing the abuse. Though she apparently indicated the worst of the physical abuse stopped once they got to Dallas, the captivity and control obviously continued.
And LaSalle. What was his reaction when confronted?
Predictable, really. Outright denial. He spun these elaborate lies, claiming he was her real father, making up stories about taking her from New York years before, insisting her mother knew where they were the whole time. The book describes him as just a defiant, tough, vicious character, even when he was cornered.
Meanwhile, back in Camden, how did Ella Horner react to the news Sally was found? Alive.
Oh, it was overwhelming for her. The book describes her as overjoyed, but also just overcome. Her main concern immediately shifted to Sally's safety now that LaSalle was caught.
I bet.
She expressed this fierce hope he'd get severe punishment, even wished for life imprisonment or the electric chair. Her sister, Susan, felt the same way. It shows the community outrage, too.
And the prosecutor, Mitchell Cohen, he helped get her back.
Yes, Mitchell Cohen, the Camden County prosecutor. He was instrumental in coordinating Sally's return home. The book even details her first ever plane trip back east, a huge journey marking the end of her physical captivity.
I can only imagine the reunion.
The book describes it as incredibly powerful, very moving. Ella waited anxiously at the Philadelphia airport. When Sally's plane landed and she saw her family, she just ran down the stairs into her mother's arms.
Oh, wow.
They just clung to each other, weeping. And Sally's first words were so simple but so profound. I just want to go home. It's that moment of reclaiming family, that powerful human connection after so much isolation.
So what happened to LaSalle legally? Did he fight it?
Actually, no. After being apprehended and brought back east, he made a pretty surprising decision. He chose to plead guilty.
Really? Why?
The book quotes him directly. I am guilty. I want to get it off my chest. Maybe the weight of it all, maybe strategy, who knows. but he pled guilty.
And the sentence?
Judge Rocco Police sentenced him to a concurrent term of 30 to 35 years for kidnapping. Prosecutor Coleman made a statement saying something like, "Mothers throughout the country will give a sigh of relief." The judge apparently called LaSalle a moral leper. For the time, it was a significant sentence. Justice, in a legal sense anyway.
So Sally was finally home. What was life like for her after the rescue?
She moved back, lived first with her mother, then with her sister Susan and brother-in-law Al Pinero in Florence, New Jersey. The book notes, though, that for decades within the family, what happened was, well, it was largely unspoken. A heavy silence around the trauma.
That's understandable, I suppose. But did she manage to rebuild her life at all?
The book shows glimpses of incredible resilience, her efforts to find some normalcy after everything. She helped care for her baby niece, Diana, worked in the family greenhouse, and she excelled academically.
Really?
Yeah, described as an A student at Borough Junior High, graduated with honors. There's even mention of a brief film clip of her at the zoo, just a small snapshot of a typical teenage moment. It reminds you of the young life she was fighting so hard to reclaim.
But the trauma must have had lasting effects.
Oh, absolutely. It was unavoidable. The book talks about how classmates would whisper, gossip about her time with LaSalle. Boys gave her unwanted attention. One classmate recalled some kids looked at her as a total whore.
That's awful, judging the victim.
Exactly. She struggled to make friends, felt ostracized, judged for something inflicted on her. It just shows how the trauma didn't end with rescue. It left deep, painful scars, made worse by how others reacted.
Such a stark reminder of the societal judgment victims often face. And then, tragically, her life, just as it was maybe starting to stabilize, it was cut short.
Yeah. In August 1952, she was only 15. She took a trip to Wildwood with her best friend, Carol Starts, same age. You know, like teenagers do, they used fake IDs to get into clubs, go dancing.
Okay.
That's where Sally met Eddie Baker. He was 21. On the drive back home later that night, Sally decided to ride with Eddie Baker towards Vineland, where she planned to catch a bus. It was late. Their car hit some parked trucks.
Oh, no.
Sally died instantly in the crash. Her brother-in-law, Al Pinero, had to identify her body. And it was horrific. Her face was too damaged. He had to identify her by a scar.
God, how devastating. For everyone.
Absolutely devastating. Carol Starts was left in shock, grieving. Eddie Baker survived with injuries, was later charged with reckless homicide. Just an awful, awful end to a life already marked by so much tragedy.
And this is the point, right, where the book makes that crucial, compelling connection to Nabokov's Lolita.
Precisely. The book presents really clear evidence that Vladimir Nabokov knew Sally Horner's story. It shows he saw a newspaper account of her death in August 1952. He was out in Wyoming at the time.
He didn't just see it, he noted it down.
Critically, yes. He took notes on an index card, jotted down specific details. Her age, 15, the length of her captivity, 21 months, LaSalle's sentence, 35 years. The facts were right there in his notes.
So Weinman's book argues it wasn't just general awareness, but specific parallels were woven into Lolita.
Exactly. It makes a powerful case. For instance, remember LaSalle's initial leverage over Sally? That threat of reform school?
Yeah.
The book points out how that mirrors precisely the way Humbert uses a similar reformatory threat to control Dolores Hayes in the novel. It's a chilling echo.
That is chilling. What other parallels?
Another one the book highlights is that pivotal phone call in Lolita. Dolores is afraid to call her mother, and Humbert prevents it by lying, telling her mother is dead. That lie cements her dependence on him.
Right.
And the book contrasted that darkly with Sally's real-life phone call home, the one Ruth Janisch helped her make, which actually led to her rescue. It's almost like a perverse inversion of the real event in the fiction.
Wow. Okay. Anything else?
Then there's the sentence itself. In the novel's final chapter, Humbert mentions the potential sentence he faces. He specifically says, at least 35 years for rape.
Which is remarkably close to LaSalle's sentence.
Eerily close. LaSalle got 30 to 35 years for kidnapping. And the book even connects another tragic real-life event Nabokov likely saw reported around the same time as Sally's death, the G. Edward Grammer case. A man murdered his wife via a staged car crash.
And Weinman suggests
this might have echoed in the fictional death of Charlotte Hayes, Dolores' mother, who dies after being hit by a car in the novel.
So the book makes a really compelling case that these real-life events, especially Sally Horner's story, undeniably influenced Nabokov's work.
It really does. Despite his famous statements about art being separate from biography, hating the Tom peeping into writers' lives, the real Lolita demonstrates pretty clearly how these public tragedies imprinted themselves on the details of his fiction.
Did his wife, Vera, ever acknowledge anything?
The book includes her perspective, too. Vera Nabokov apparently hoped readers would notice the tender description of a child's helplessness, her pathetic dependence on monstrous HH, a slightly different angle, focusing on the portrayal of the victim.
Which brings us to a crucial point the book makes, right? About how Lolita was received.
Exactly, and it's one of the book's most important points. Weinman argues that many readers may be seduced by Nabokov's incredible language, the artfulness of it all. They missed the real tragedy folded into the novel.
They didn't see the victim.
Worse, some even misinterpreted Dolores Hayes's behavior, seeing her as somehow complicit or manipulative. They completely failed to see her as a victim of monstrous abuse, the same kind of abuse Sally Horner actually endured.
So ultimately, the real Lolita is about pulling back that curtain of fiction.
Yes, to reveal the devastating human cost behind the story that likely inspired it. The book insists that we see the real life, the real pain, the real girl, Sally Horner, behind the famous fictional character.
It creates such a powerful link between that real-life tragedy and the fictional narrative. And really understanding Sally Horner's story as this book lays it out, it just profoundly changes how you read Lolita, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It forces a shift in perspective, moves the focus away from the perpetrator's narrative, no matter how brilliantly written it is, and back onto the profound suffering of the victim.
And if you're interested in exploring this kind of critical thinking, more connecting literature, history, these challenging real-world issues, remember our mindful moments on our YouTube channel.
Yeah, those AI analyses are designed to help you reflect more deeply on complex topics just like this one. And you can find more in-depth discussions on a whole range of subjects on our other podcasts, too.
We really hope this exploration of the real Lolita has been insightful for you.
Definitely.
We'd encourage you to subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Maybe share this discussion with others who might be interested in this connection or just in the book itself.
And consider purchasing The Real Lolita by Sarah Weinman to really dive into her research. We'll put a link in the description for you.
And most importantly, just keep thinking critically about the stories we consume, fiction, nonfiction, all of it.
Yeah, consider the realities they might obscure or the real lives that might have inspired them.
How can art both illuminate and, sometimes maybe unintentionally, conceal the very suffering that gives it life? It's a question well worth pondering long after you finish the book.